Hello guys, my name is Diego Pacheco and this is another Java video. So today we will be seeing a bunch of things together. Basically we're gonna see Spring data repositories working with JPA, H2 database, which is a very lightweight database we can leverage for tests. We're also gonna see queries, and we're gonna see also the ability to change, to modify some data on the database, also using query mappings, and we're gonna see as well testing happening with mock MVC and JPA together, right? As you guys know, I'm not a fanboy of ORM and JPA. I personally prefer simplicity, although I need to admit that Hibernate is getting better nowadays with Hibernate reactively. And Spring Data also makes much less verbose, right? But anyway, I know that there is lots of people who like that, so this might be useful for you guys. Okay, so without further ado, let me share my screen and we can get started from there. So I have this POC here I made. I'm gonna open my idea. There's a bunch of things for us to catch up here. So let's start as always from the dependency management part. So I'm using Maven here. As you can see, I'm using one of the latest Spring Boot 2.4.1. I have the dependency of starter web, starter test, and there is two other important dependencies. One is starter data JPA and H2, right? Ideally, you want to scope this as test, right? But since this whole application is just to show these features working together for you guys, I didn't bother, right? But ideally, you don't want to do scope. You don't want to do scope runtime because you are either using another database like Postgres or MySQL or Aurora, wherever, right? So here we often use H2 as the test scope, right? But for this case, it's fine this way. But keep in mind, we need to change this. Okay, so that's the dependencies. Now let's take a look on the application. There's a couple of things here we need to take a look. Let's start with the module, right? So I have a book. This application about books. I like to read books. I am an author of a book. So here we are doing JPA mapping, right? So it's an entity. And I want to map the table for the table called book. It's a pretty simple structure. I don't have relationships. I basically have ID, which is gonna be my ID, and title, and an author, sorry. So you have ID of the book, the title of the book, and the author of the book. Then empty and partial constructor, full constructor, getter setters, equals, hash code, and toString. For the ID, I also have a generated value strategy to be identity. I'm saying it is not optional, right? And I'm saying this needs to be unique and not knowable. So under the hood, H2 will create a sequence generator for us based on this metadata here. So that's the mapping, no news here, right? Now let's take a look on the service, right? The service, there's lots of interesting things that happens there, right? So we have a book service. This service, it has an annotation at service, right? We are injecting a DAO, which is actually a repository, right? Book repository interface. We're gonna see in a moment. And there's a bunch of things we can do here. We can save, which means either we're gonna insert or update, and then I just call the DAO and return the book back, right? We have a method I create get a book by title. So you pass the title of the book. I try to find by title, and then I return that book. And if by any means the book is null, I'm throwing a book not found exception, right? If you take a look on this exception, this is a mapped exception. There's a response status here. So there's a bind with HTTP error code. So this will be binded to 404, right? So if the book is null, we don't find the book a true exception, otherwise we return the book. There's the classical find all here, where I'm just delegating to DAO find all, and the delete by ID. So delete by ID, the first thing I'm looking is I have this method here on the DAO called exists by ID. I try to see if exists. If boolean trues, it means exists, then I delete it and return. Otherwise, I throw an exception saying I cannot delete this book because I couldn't find it, right? And finally, I have a method to do some cleanup. Basically, this method will delete all the books and will reset the ID sequence. And I had to annotate this method as transactional, and you're gonna see why when we see the repository, right? So yeah, that's the service. Let's take a look on the DAO, the repository part, right? So we saw the we saw the service, we saw the module, right? And now let's see the DAO. So here I have a book repository, right? It's a repository pattern. It extends the JPA repository, and the project that we're gonna work on is book, and the ID is a long. Then we are inheriting all utilitarian methods from the JPA repository and CRUD repository, like find by ID, find all, etc. But also adding two other methods, right? So here I'm doing a query, and this is not a native query. It is a JPA query language. So I'm selecting B from book, which is my entity, where lowercase the title is equal to lowercase the parameter title. And the parameter, I get it from this @param title here with this with this parameter from this method, right? So that is find by title, and I return a book. Then there is another one to reset the ID sequence, and I need to do an outer table, right, on the column on the table book. This is a native query, right? So this is SQL. This is not JPA query language. And then I need to alter the column ID, and I want to restart with 1. By default, the queries should be queries already. They should not be modifying data like with DDL or DML, like inserts and updates. So in order that to work, we need to have this annotation called @modifying, and then that's allowed to happen. And that's also what is requiring the @transactional there, right? So we see the service, we see the repository, we see the model. Now let's take a look on the JPA configuration, right? So this is pretty straightforward. So I have here an configuration because it's a Spring Beans configuration. I need to enable JPA repositories, and then we do a base scan in my POJOs. I enable transaction management, and I enable auto configuration. Then we're gonna auto wire an environment here, and we need to provide a data source. And then there's a bean to provide this data source. A data source is a SQL data source, right? So here we are creating a driver manager data source. Of course, there's better ways to do connection pooling here. Nowadays, Hikari is pretty good, but for simplicity, I just did this way. So what's happening here, I'm setting the driver class, the URL, the password, and the user, basically getting properties from the environment, right? And these properties are in a property file. So that's it. No hard code configs here. And this is cool because then if you want, we can have different properties for development or production, so we can create profiles. That's cool. So, okay, now that we looked at, let's look at the properties, right? So in application properties, like I said, this is a POC just for this video. Otherwise, I would have like an application properties, and in tests, I would probably have like a test properties here, right? So here you can see the URL is JDBC H2 tilde test, right? Later on, I'm gonna show the console. We also can do some queries on the database. The driver class is org H2 driver. The user and the password is SA. And here there's another configurations like the dialect is H2 for JPA Hibernate. I'm enabling the H2 console, which we're gonna see in a moment. Also saying that the path to access that is /H2 console. There are some configurations here to generate the DDL for us and also put them into a file called create.sql. You're gonna see that I have, because I was running this before, right? I have the file here with the all DDL being created, being shaved here. What else? Okay, so we saw that. Now we can take a look on the controller. So for the controller, we have a controller and we also have a mapped exception. So in the controller, we have a bunch of operations here. This is annotated at REST controller. We auto-wire, we inject, we do injection by type here for the book service, right? And then we have a method to create a book. On the request mapping, this is a post verb. The URL is /book and produces and consumes JSON. And I have a response body here, so take care of the proper serialization of the POJO for me. I return a book POJO, and I have a request body as well to make sure, you know, if you send me a JSON, it will marshal that and unmarshal and take care and give me a book. Then I just call the service and save either can be insert or update. Then I have another one to get the book by title. So this is a get verb, it's /book, and then the title. This produces JSON, response body as well, returns the book. And there's a path variable here with this title, so these two strings here needs to match. And then the title here. And then I just call the service, and I call get by title and pass the title. Then I have to get all the books, so this is a get, just /books, /book. This produces JSON, response body as well, but now I have a list of book, and I just call find all, and as you saw, I didn't code find all. Find all, it is actually I have on the service, right? But in my DAO, this is getting from the JPA repository, right? So I didn't have to code that. That's built-in functionality for me. So, and finally, I have a delete, right? So the verb is delete, is /book, and then the ID. It produces JSON, response body. Then we just call delete book by ID, and the path variable is ID and the long. And then I just call the service to delete by ID, and the service we have this kind of orchestration where I'm calling my exists by method that already exists, right, and is on the CRUD repository. Right, it's part of the hierarchy of the repository, so we don't need to code that from scratch. But then I have the delete by ID that's also there, right? So this is cool because we didn't have to code any of these methods, right? This is the cool part. And finally, you know, you see that delete all is not exposed, and you're gonna see who is calling this, right? But the delete all, it goes to existing method as well, the CRUD repository, right? But the other one, if you go the by ID, that's one of we create here with the modifying, right? So who is calling this, right? Well, the whole application is calling this when it boots up, right? This is the exception we throw. There is the response status as well, right? Book not find exception. This is used on the code here. If let me go back here. So if you're trying to delete and the book doesn't exist, I throw it. Or if you're trying to get by title and the title doesn't exist, I throw that as well, right? And that will be mapped to 404. So who is calling that method there, right? Well, now that we saw that, we can look the application and then you're gonna see what's happening here. So basically, I'm injecting the service here, and once the application boot up, I'm gonna delete all the books. It's calling only internally. It is not exposed to the user, right? And I'm doing that just for sake of to make it easier to demo you guys, right? So that's it. I have the tests, but before we look the tests and run the tests, let's run the application, because I also have some script I created to test this, and I want to show you guys. So let's boot up the application. Application is booting up. Okay, application is up. Now, on the console, I have this test .sh, right, where first of all, I'm using curl here and bash scripting. I'm trying to create a book, right? So I'm gonna create the foundation from Isaac Asimov. Then I'm gonna get a book by title. I'm gonna get all the books. I'm gonna delete the book, and that's it. So we can easily call that, right? And we can see it all works. We see all the outputs here. Creating a book, we got our JSON. Then getting the book by title, it also works. Getting all the books, we just have one book. And also deleting a book as well. All good, right? Okay, now that we saw that helps and working, I'm gonna stop the application here. Oh, sorry. Let me run again. I wanna show one more thing, actually. Yes, I think I clean up everything. Let me try to run this one more time. Yes, so let's see if this will work now. So if you read 880/H2 console, right? We're gonna be able to connect on the H2 database. By default, this might not appear here. Otherwise, you can copy from the application properties, right? And then we can connect there. And then we can take a look. Let's see if we have some data for the book, right? Yeah, so we have the table, but we don't have data for the book, right? And that's fine. So what, because I'm deleting, right? So that's why I'm not seeing stuff here. So let's take a look on the tests, right? So for the test, I am combining two things together. I'm combining the mock MVC capability and also using Spring Data JPA here, right? And yes, you can do both things together. So I'm testing most of the things here. So have extends with Spring extension, auto configure mock MVC and Spring Boot test. Then I auto wire, so injecting a mock MVC here, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4 tests, right? So test number 1, I'm getting the book by name not found. So I'm trying to look for a name. Peopleware. Peopleware is a good book, but I don't have it here, right? So then I'm doing a get, and that's the URL I'm hitting, and I'm checking if it's not found, right? 404, and if the if I got an exception, if the message is this message, right? Then I'm creating a book, right? So I'm creating Isaac Asimov Foundation. Then I'm using Jackson Object Mapper here to have this book in JSON, right? And then I'm doing a post to book, passing that payload as as JSON here, right, on the content. Then I'm expecting to be 200 or so, meaning that successfully you're gonna create the book. And then I'm looking the result and getting as a string, and I expect it to have this part of the JSON, right? So as you can see here, I'm ignoring the ID, so it doesn't matter whatever ID I got. If I get the title and the author I expect, is all good. Then I'm deleting a book. So what I do here, I first call the method to create the book, right? So I run this test here, so I make sure I have a book, at least one book, right? Because I don't know the order, which one will run. Then I'm getting a book, and then I'm using end return to get a mock MVC result, right? So I'm getting all possible books. Then I'm using Jackson Object Mapper, right? And I'm doing this line here, right? Because I want to get a list of books, right? So I need to do this collection type reference, right? In order to tell precisely Jackson how to marshal in Marshall, right, how to deserialize this for me, unmarshal in this case. And then I just to read value, I pass the JSON that I got, right, from the previous request, which is here, right? And then I pass my type reference, right? And then I can get a list of books, nice, well-typed pages. Then finally we do the delete, right? So there is a static import here, as you can see, right? That's why delete works. And the delete is the book slash book, right, and the ID. Then I'm not deleting all the books, I just deleting wherever the first book that appears getting that ID. Then checking if it's 200, and I should not see any exception here, so I'm expecting that the resolved exception should be null, right? And finally, I'm trying to delete a book that doesn't exist, right? So I'm passing this long ID. Then I'm expecting it's not found, meaning 404. And then I expect to see book not found exception, and I expect also to have that message. So let me run all the tests here. And as you're gonna see, they all passed, right? So I'm deleting things. I'm not sure if I'm gonna have data, but I can try again. Oh, my app's not running. Yeah, so the issue is because I'm deleting here, I won't be able to show you the data, right? So let's do one thing. Let's remove this part here, right? So when we boot up, we are not cleaning up the data any longer. Yes, and then we can also run the test part. And if I go here, I say probably gonna have data to show. There you go. So I don't have any constraint, and I should have it, all right, on the author and title to guarantee uniqueness. My uniqueness is always on the ID, right? So that's why we are seeing this. But it works. As you can see here, we can access the H2 console, and we can use it just fine. We can even see what data do we have there, right? So that's it for this video. I hope you guys like it. See you next time. Take care. Cheers.